Alright, this will not be a short video, and only those interested in my experiences with Evan Taylor, an attorney out of Owensboro, Kentucky, and interested in honest opinion and beliefs about him for either their own knowledge and education or whatever other reason will find this video relevant. Prior to making this video, I gave the attorney more than 30 days to contact me and to provide any statement he wished, and he declined via his lack of any attempted contact, obviously. This video won't be that pretty nor comical, just an honest and extended review. I cannot review him in his personal life, but I can logically assert my belief about him as a person based upon a logical analysis of what I've experienced personally and what I've heard from others as to their experiences with him. And here's what I'd call my opening statement. If you want an attorney you can't rely on to do what even he says and what he should figure out to do as an attorney without you having to constantly worry about him lying to you about doing things or not doing them or doing them too late so that it causes issues with your situation or having to remind that attorney of what he needs to do, then Evan Taylor, or Edwin Evans Taylor, which seems like is the same person, is the piece of trash attorney for the job. Allow me to explain. So this is my review of Evan Taylor in Owensboro, Kentucky, also apparently seemingly Edwin Evans Taylor. I'm including links to all sources in the video description, and from what I've been able to gather, it would seem he attempted to disassociate himself in the past from past issues and negative reviews by associating his name differently or taking other such steps. If you want to spread the word about him, so that others can be warned, by all means feel free. What happens is that the review places like Yelp and others find ways to say a review was not valid or some other excuse to hide or remove negative reviews, often at the behest of people like Evan Taylor, such as Yelp, which you'll see in some pictures here, showing 2 reviews and a 5-star rating, ignoring the several negative reviews further down the page, actually hiding them, and not only claiming on that page that those reviews aren't taken into consideration for the ratings, he has, but also claiming that they aren't currently recommended. Their words. Also, there is no way I could fit the amount of relevant information into a review in the small amount of characters allowed to be typed, so instead, I'm leaving basic negative reviews with links to this video. Oh, and here's a quick legal notice, and if it comes down, if they take it down at YouTube, I mean, it's going up everywhere anyway. I mean, YouTube, BitChute, I'll put it everywhere. I'll start a website to put it up. There's no way you'll bury this, Mr. Taylor. There's no way. Legal notice. All photos and accounts shown were obtained through publicly available access at the time I obtained them and at the time of editing this video. They are all, to my best belief, related to the same Evan Taylor or Edwin Evans Taylor, whom I am reviewing as an attorney in the state of Kentucky, city of Owensboro. All are used in accordance with my First Amendment right to support, prove, comment upon my assertions, beliefs, opinions, and conclusions about the attorney. I have violated no law, state or federal, nor otherwise to my knowledge, in obtaining or utilized said photos, easily obtained as I did, directly from the internet, with no more effort needed than a little patience and clicking on links and logical analysis and seeing what's connected to what and where his connections are, etc. If any of the photos are not related to the reviewed person, then they are included in error, but again, I am of the belief the accounts and photos shown are in fact the correct person and linked to the correct person reviewed within. On to my experiences with Evan Taylor, attorney, Owensboro, Kentucky, or whatever he wants to go by today or after this video. Liar. He often lied. In our correspondences, via typed messages as well as telephone communications, he was caught on many occasions lying about facts and contradicting himself via his most recent claims and statements, and then, making another statement. Evan Taylor is absolutely, without a doubt, a liar. Negligence and incompetence. Negligence is explained as I go on, but if missing deadlines, not knowing facts, wrongly stating facts, lying, I believe thievery, not knowing basic laws that even a 10-year-old could find and ascertain on the internet, or basic statute sites for Kentucky isn't negligence, I don't know what is. Ignorance of the law. Several times I asked him the law regarding something pertaining to my situation and simple law information, and he would either not answer, or when he did, he would make provably false claims about the law I was talking to him about, and then try to cover for his ignorance with statements like, well, I've never heard of them doing that, as if his lack of knowledge about basic law any idiot first-month law student would, could, and should know was somehow made less moronic and less negligent by his claiming that he didn't ever hear of such occurrences, which, by the way, I'll call him a liar about here and now as well. It was obvious Such occurrences happened, and he was attempting to downplay his failure of knowledge, lack of knowledge, failure to be informed on my situation specifically, and failure in general as an attorney. Thief. I am absolutely calling him a thief. He literally took more money, did less than the bare minimum, then took more money, which is no different than a thief, then lied about what he was actually doing. Constantly just showing up to listen to the court or whomever lie, not adhere to state law, not follow rules, etc. I am absolutely calling Edwin Taylor, attorney, Owensboro, Kentucky, a criminal and a thief. He often just tried to play on emotion and fear. And there's some other reviewers that said the same thing, and so I'm kind of confirming that here, but they've said it first. Like a typical fearmonger, it was an obvious ploy to attempt to keep you engaged and feeling as if you were needing him, thus to keep your money flowing to him. I called him on it several times, outright, in text and on the phone, and as usual, anytime he was called out for lying or contradicting his previous statement or changing the facts of clearly written documents as if I couldn't read for myself, I was illiterate, or not knowing the answer to basic questions, he had either an excuse that was preposterous and ridiculous at the same time, or would simply attempt to ignore what I called him out about, change the subject, and ignore the fact that he was caught, and try to fall back on fear-mongering tactics again, or just not respond at all. Failing to make deadlines. He often failed to make deadlines. He failed to make a deadline requiring him to beg the court to submit it late. And this was even after months of my reminding him that the deadline was approaching. And I think I go into that a little bit more later, but I'll say that here. Never, except maybe one or two occasions, he took any action, objection, countering to anything in court that he knew was not correct, even when he was the one whom told me they weren't following the law or not adhering to rules, etc. He did not know what the hell was going on with my situation, ever. I had to remind him constantly of the actual facts of the case, or the facts of a specific document that he was misciting, because he would always misquote and misstate, miscite completely incorrectly, which had an effect on the matters at hand. Communication. Literally, almost always, he failed to communicate, and many times it took me hundreds of messages to attempt to maybe get a response from him regarding something, and when I did get a response, it often didn't even address the main point of the comment, as if he were circumventing, attempting to ignore, attempting to avoid it, or answer the questions posed to him. He would purposely attempt to change the subject or avoid a subject when I was pointing out discrepancies and contradictions or incorrect information he was citing regarding a paper from the court or the law. He always avoided anything that was stated to him that absolutely proved he was not informed on the matter, not telling the truth of the matter, and or his current statement was a direct 180-degree contradiction to his previous statement on the matter. This is all proven in our communications via my case, and telephonic communications, as well as email. My case is a cloud-based attorney-client communications and document upload and download site, if you don't know, which he seemed to use as a smokescreen and a source to hide behind to avoid what he didn't want to discuss or knew was proven to show his incompetence, negligence, inadequate practices, etc. The fact is, his communications were at best lacking and at worst often purposeful attempts to avoid, lie, and protect himself from his own failures and lies as an attorney, term used very loosely here. He several times purposely refused to submit what was necessary that he submit, and then by the time he submitted certain things, actual damage had been done to the situation. He always had an excuse that often made no sense when you look at the actual facts. Again, going back to him being a fraudster and a liar. He literally just wanted to do barely anything above nothing and tried to make excuses for what he was doing and why he was doing so. At one point, over the course of months, not days, not weeks, months, I messaged him about why he didn't submit something he told me he was going to submit. And when I finally got an answer, it made so little sense that I called him out on it, and then he ignored the answer. One instance, he told me he had submitted something, and then was proven later that he lied by the date on the actual submission. Actually, this is several instances that occurred, and that's all documented on my case and all the things too. Anyway, yet again, he was lying. One time, it was something about his child being in the hospital. Another time, he was going on vacation. He apparently got to enjoy that vacation, though, through fraudulent practices, lying, and thievery for the money that he got from those defendants and myself that he defrauds. He is absolutely a habitual liar. Absolutely an habitual liar. Is he worth the money, you might ask? Well, if he spent thousands of dollars and in the end he has done almost literally nothing, I'd not consider that worth the money. He would literally show up at a hearing and tell me later that they are only 5-minute hearings and nothing changed. I am going to be requesting all of the video and audio of the hearings he allegedly appeared at, as I'm under the belief he did nothing, because that is what he does. Further, he would be at a hearing, not counter anything. These are hearings I was at and heard myself. Not argue anything, not object to anything 99% of the time. 99.9% of the time, excuse me. And just let the state do whatever they wanted, essentially acting as their representative, not mine. He constantly gave bad advice, which always turned out to be detrimental, actually damaging to the case and the facts and the situation. So his decision making in legal matters is horrid at best, and at worst was motivated by what I would call his superior allegiance to the system as opposed to his client. He didn't want to rock the boat, but I go into that later, I believe. He knew the state was not conforming with the state law. He even told me about such, and when I kept pushing him to force them to do so and to make it a matter of record that they aren't, he did nothing ever about the situation. Every judge he said he knew and always called them a good guy, and every time his opinion was proven not just arguably wrong, but demonstrably wrong, to the point I told him that his character judgment was very bad. As another point, he was less than forward and honest about how the money would be spent and what his fees were. He would literally charge $25 and more just to read a one-sentence message that he himself solicited, which I also consider was a part of his little plan to make more money, which to me also shows his attempt to game employ and play the system. Further, I had an amount he said I owed, then suddenly said that amount was much larger, and what he added to it does not add up, especially when you consider his own claims of 5-minute hearings, and yet it appears I was charged for full-length hearings, in-depth hearings. Many things do not add up with this guy, and I'm looking into it. Here's an example of his actual mentality. I provided him with evidence proving misrepresentation, lies, perjury, etc., and his response to me was, "What is it you want me to do with this?" This goes along with my other comment that I was constantly having to do his job, looking at things, confirming the actual information on submissions and responses from the court, correcting him on the same, reminding him about upcoming hearings, what was or wasn't submitted, on and on. Absolutely, he is the worst attorney I have ever heard of in all aspects, period. Here's an example of his mentality and his desire to represent the court system and being commanded and controlled by the court system as opposed to representing and being controlled by his clients. One time he told me he was working on a submission and it required my okay and essentially my signature, then he'd submit it. I don't remember ever signing or okaying it, yet then he later tells me after the fact or post facto that he submitted it, quote, because the judge told me to. End quote. Not only is this a violation of ethics, adequate objective representation of a client, but I'd want to venture to say it was illegal and illegal tampering and coercion by the system itself, which he did nothing about and simply kowtowed to. However, this is no surprise when you consider that his main concern was never about the situation, but only about staying in the good opinions and good graces of his masters in the court system, the same system that commanded him to act on their behalf and for their benefit, and that he complied with not only in the aforementioned situation, but seemingly throughout the process, with his mentality of wanting to please the court, and reluctance and refusal to argue with anything or against anything or counter anything or object to almost anything. I read one reviewer that said he was, quote, a bulldog in court, end quote. Well, maybe for him, but I've seen kittens with more initiative, aggression, assertiveness, and bravery than Edwin Taylor. He should stop pretending to be an attorney for clients and just come out and admit he's a puppet of the local system, judges, courts, and others. If you want to be stepped on, ignored, trampled, and ultimately have your rights, the law, and basic legal principles ignored, trampled on, and circumvented, then Edwin Taylor in Owensboro, Kentucky is the dishonorable coward for the job. Give him a call. Here's another example, is when I would point out, or he would point out, that certain people in the system were claiming they didn't have the information they obviously had. Edwin Taylor would tell me they were claiming they didn't have it, and that they obviously did have it, coming from him. This is what he said. Then he'd almost defend them, while at the same time talking tough about doing something about it. You know what he ended up doing about it? Nothing. In every situation, nothing. Absolutely nothing. He didn't challenge them in court or even bring it up or file anything or do anything to attempt to force them to correct their inactions or misactions or lies by making a part of the record or attempting to make the court force them to act and stop lying about the information that was clearly available to them. Again, I say to you, he works for the system, not the client. Back to him not knowing what was going on and other such issues. He would make comments about there not being a hearing even when his own My Case listed a hearing, had a notice put up by him or his secretary about such an upcoming hearing. This brings me to his office managerial issues and staff. Office managerial and staffing issue. He apparently had a very high staff turnover rate from the very beginning. Numerous people were at different times there, then gone for good. The communication in the office between him and his staff was either non-existent or horrible at best. No one in the office actually often knew what was going on between each other, and that also caused many issues, headaches, etc. for the situation. His office was apparently a mess of failed communication, lack of information, and not helpful in the least. I am convinced that some of this was purposeful, such as the excuses he told his staff to give or to use his staff as an avoidance mechanism to hide behind to avoid having to answer for the blatant lies, fraud, negligence, incompetence, thievery, misappropriation, failure to be diligent, failure to make deadlines, failure to follow through on what he said he was going to do and what I wanted done. I don't blame the office staff. I have a sneaking suspicion he is the cause of his office issues, not his staff. When you're the only common variable throughout a long course of office staff leaving and coming, you tend to start thinking it's not the staff, it's the employer. Moving on. Negative reviews. If you look at the screenshot that's going to be in this video somewhere, I'm not even organizing them, I'm just throwing them on there. But if you look at the screenshot of one negative review, that person lists several of the exact issues I'm describing in my own review as stated above. Such as him attempting to utilize fear, etc. Further, on Yelp, if you read their mission statement about how they are fair with what reviews they show, then go down to see that they hid 3 main negative reviews, 2 or 3 I believe. That should give you some insight into Yelp as well, though Yelp is not my main subject here. I just thought it worth noting that they are literally hiding from the main page and burying those negative reviews and claiming they are showing the most relevant. Most relevant if you don't want to hear the negatives before hiring an attorney. Anyway, moving on. The bottom line, especially regarding his communication, is that his communication was often non-existent when and where it was needed, and then often didn't address the specifics, and especially if those specifics were shown to prove he was either lying, ignorant, uneducated in the matter, contradicting his own previous statements and claims, etc. If you are lucky enough to get a response and he does halfway address the subject needing discussed, and often more evidence, he is as useless as an attorney as square wheels are on a car. If this is your desire and you're comfortable with this, by all means, hire him. Again, though, you've been warned. He has a few positive reviews, and again, maybe they did have a good experience with him, or maybe they just didn't pay attention to what he was actually doing and saying to them and doing in court, etc. I also would question some of the positive reviews for various reasons, but I can only tell you my experiences and give my review. Their reviews are their own. One review mentioned Edwin Taylor, like I said, being a bulldog in court. Okay, well, all I ever saw was him being one of those little yapping dogs that hides from their own shadow or runs to the hostile dogs and lowers his head to show he is accepting being dominated, just like he did to the system. Every time there was an issue he needed to contradict them about, counter, object to, etc. In my opinion, Edwin Taylor is an absolute coward in court. Here's some more about excuses. He always had an excuse about why he wasn't keeping up with the situation and facts, or why he failed to act, or failed to object, or failed to submit on time, etc. He had nothing but excuses and failure. If you are in the Owensboro, Kentucky area, and you have need and opportunity to hire this piece of trash failure as an attorney, that is your right and choice. However, if you care about your freedom, your money, your life, your rights, your case being handled in a competent, adequate, responsible, knowledgeable, timely fashion, and you care about having an attorney whom is actually working for you instead of being more concerned about not rocking the boat of the system of his friends in the local court, then I'd tell you to hire anyone else. Maybe you'll get lucky and he'll actually do something for the money he takes from you. and actually is willing to act, counter, challenge, object, file on time, fight for your rights. Or maybe you'll find out when it is too late he was nothing more than a lying, ignorant, thieving, negligent, incompetent, unknowledgeable pawn of the local court and has damaged your scenario. It is my absolute 100% belief that Evan Taylor, due to negligence, inadequate counsel, ignorance, complacency, incompetence, and malice, as he was literally giving all indications he was more concerned about the local clique of the court system than his alleged client, did do absolute, permanent, irrevocable, and real damage, and that such damage is both measurable and observable through both historical actions, inactions, communications, failed timely submissions, refusal to act, and malpractice, and his own admissions, incompetence, negligence, procrastination, and conflict of interest, with his allegiance always seemingly to be to the system, not the client, as a totality of failure to practice law and even the most basic form of rightful expectation. In other words, if you want a good attorney and don't want to risk your money, freedom, whatever you are dealing with at that point, if it's a criminal case for you, freedom, or civil case, money, time, etc., and risk permanent damage to your scenario by an incompetent buffoon, I'd urge you to go hire a first-year paralegal whom undoubtedly could handle your case and perform more effectively and adequately than Evan Taylor in Owensboro, Kentucky. However, if you like to gamble with your life, freedom, property, money, etc., then by all means, here is his information. Evan Taylor Law Office, PSC, 2207 Frederica Street, Owensboro, Kentucky, 42301. Telephone number 270-229-6110 is one that's listed, or 270-683-3533. I found multiple other numbers listed for him, but those are the two main ones it seems. Here's another little gem that gives hint to his approach at allegedly representing you and practicing law. I told him I wanted him to challenge something one time. Actually, many times, but this is one specific. And his response to me was, the way I see my job is I make sure your rights aren't violated. By that, he obviously was saying and meant, based upon facts and what occurred, that he believes he just takes your money, does nothing assertive, sits around, neutral, shows up, stands there, does nothing, listens, and then leaves, then collects more money. That is what he did, and when it comes to ensuring your rights aren't trampled, even while doing absolutely nothing considered an actual fight, he failed at the rights protections as well. He literally is worse than the worst. If you have a choice between cancer and hiring Edwin Taylor, I'm not saying choose cancer, but you might want to consider the choice. And here's my closing. Evan Taylor, if you watched and read this, be sure to not delete anything. That includes any communications, any documents, anything on my case or anywhere else. And the court should expect videos, recording, stenographer, documentation, papers, etc. to be requested from them. Further, sir, I will tell you this. In my absolute opinion, based upon everything I've seen and everything that's documented, everything you've done and not done, you, sir, are a liar, a thief, a fraud, a criminal, incompetent, negligent, inadequate, not only counsel, but human being in general. That's my opinion. Again, as stated at the beginning, you can go back and listen to that. You do more damage to any situation you're introduced to through your negligence and competence than any benefit you could ever hope to provide. And if it's the last thing I do in this world, it will be my life's mission and ambition to ensure I make as many others as is humanly possible aware of what I've experienced. The only service you provided was collecting the money. Other than that, and possibly your staff in some small way did some actual work, you should be disbarred and incarcerated for fraud at the least. I am absolutely stating that if the file, videos, audio, court documentation, your claims and assertions and everything else is examined, my claims are supported. You were nothing more than the beggar on the street with a dirt cloth wanting to wash the windshield of someone's car. You made the windshield dirtier, made the situation worse, but held your hand out to collect more and more money, and then disappeared back into the nearest back alley to avoid and ignore the consequences of your own actions and being forced to hear about or respond to such factual claims. By all facts, history, documentation, experience, you worked for the other side. the state, while collecting money from the side you claimed you were representing, all to stay in the good graces of your local clique and buddy-buddy system. You are the exact problem with the attorney profession today, too worried about being a friend of the court and throwing your client at their mercy for possible later gains and hopeful favorable rulings or favorable outcomes and dispositions, and just favorable opinions about yourself. As a side note, I've also read his replies to reviews that talk about what he really is. He tries to use quips and or short comments or of deflection, detraction, distraction, and whatever he can to attempt to discount the negative reviews. His replies are laughable at best and proof of his mentality at worst. If you believe you had a good experience with him, well, good for you. I once owned a car everyone else had issues with, but I didn't. It didn't change the fact that there were overwhelming documented issues, and the odds were that the other owners would have them, even if some few, such as I, did not. Bottom line, if you care about your rights and alleged justice in an alleged justice system, give your money to someone else. Your choice, your gamble. Some notes here regarding pictures, sources, etc. Regarding sources, all public and publicly accessible by me and anyone else at the time I made this video and edited it. All sources had connections with and or direct links to identifying information regarding him as an attorney, etc. in the Owensboro area, his current law practice website, and I am convinced they are all referring to the correct person whom I'm reviewing here today. Regarding his Twitter accounts, one being attorney, the other's all linked. When you look and you see the links, you can see they're all linked together or friends of each other with the same link to Evan Taylor, Ev Taylor 12, etc., etc. One of those Twitter links, apparently he was selling scam, spam crap about taking surveys. It makes sense, though, considering what a negligent, incompetent, malpracticing thief he appears to be. Throw in scammer and spammer on the list as well. It also appears that in one link that I have, his name is Edwin Evans Taylor, and he apparently decided to go with Evan Taylor for whatever reasons. You can theorize that for yourself. I believe it has to be due to disassociating from negative reviews and what he's done in the past.